Today on the Sound Health Podcast.
This thing really is a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to need you 90 days from now. Here's the way to think about it. When the all clear is given, and there will be an all clear, there's going to be people who stagger out of the bunkers, holding their hand up to cover from the sun, blinking in the sunlight, trying to just figure out which way's up. And there's going to be a smaller group of people who sprint out of the trenches and just go because they were ready and they stayed healthy. Which one are you going to be?
Before we get started, I'd like to invite you to take advantage of a free resource I made for you. It's called the Sound Health Newsletter. In it, I share the latest research in music and health. Plus, you'll learn music and wellness exercises that you can use every day to feel your best. Just come visit me at donovanhealth.com to get started today. That's donovanhealth.com. Hey there, welcome to the show. This is Jim Donovan. I am so glad you're here. We have a very important show for you today. Our guest is retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. As a former Green Beret who served in Afghanistan, Peru, and Colombia, Scott Mann spent nearly 23 years in trust-depleted communities, building deep relationships and mobilizing thousands of people to stand up for themselves. After retiring from the U.S. Army, Scott founded Rooftop Leadership, where he helps servant leaders have deeper impact in their lives through better human connections. Scott is also the author of #1 international bestseller, Game Changers, Going Local to Defeat Violent Extremists. And we have him here today. And Scott, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me on. I feel good. I feel blessed. And I just got through hitting out in the cage with my son, Braden, throwing soft toss to him. So I feel like a dad.
Oh, nice. How old is he?
He is 16. He's my youngest of three boys, and he is a passionate baseball player. And I've had more time in the past couple of weeks to just be in the cage with him and work out with him, and it's been really special.
Yeah, that's one of the silver linings of this whole thing. I have three kids as well, and they're all home, and with all the stuff that goes along with everybody being home, and it's besides like the little tensions that happen, the bigger thing is that I'm really getting to spend like hours and hours with them. And that is, it just feels good in my heart.
I agree, man. I think even for all the funny memes that we see on social media and for all the real panic that so many parents are feeling with having to homeschool, especially young ones, I think the fact that we have been gifted the world's longest snow day, and we have a chance to really reconnect with our children.
And not everyone gets to have this opportunity where we get to be with people. And just appreciating whatever this opportunity is for what it is and kind of managing the moment, I guess, is maybe the best way to talk about it.
I agree. I just think that, there is a ton of chaos in our universe, and most of the time we don't really realize it because we manage to create these facades of order. But when we are confronted with chaos and struggle, we are also gifted, if we're open to them, I think, opportunities to redefine our relationships and our purpose and our direction. And I definitely believe that one of the things, at least for me, is a deeper connection with my wife and kids. Like, I know that was something that I was meant to get out of this. Yeah,
that is a big gift for sure.
Yeah.
I was introduced to you, just telling our listeners, by a mutual friend. This guy's name is Greg Smith. He's from Youngstown. He's the one that brought me in to do a TED Talk a couple years ago. Yeah, he's a fantastic guy. And how do you know Greg?
Greg gave me my first speaking gig coming out of the Army.
Oh, wow.
And, right. And I met him at a Bo Eason public speaking event where you learn to tell your story. And I did tell my story a little bit. Bo brought me up on the stage as a former Green Beret. And afterward, Greg contacted me and he said, I know you're breaking into the speaking world. I'd like to have you come speak to my company. And it was a life-changing moment for me. And since then, I have been kind of a primary leadership coach for just dozens of his leaders, and including his son. And so I'm very, very connected to Greg, Comco, and the wonderful people of Youngstown.
That's so cool. He, out of nowhere, I get this email from him and he's like, you need to check this out. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I open it up, and like the second I see what it is, I'm like, oh man, this is exactly the thing that I need right now. Because at the time, this is just, I think it's March 8th is the day that I started watching your course, leading through chaos. I was feeling like I have all kinds of things to do. I still am responsible for all kinds of things, but I felt paralyzed. I felt like I wasn't able to like do anything. It was the strangest feeling I had. And then I'm an early person, so I got up early and I'm watching this, and then I watch it each day until I'm finished, and I take notes, and it set me right back on a course of just calming myself, taking action, making plan, and executing the plan each day, which I can't thank you enough for.
Wow, that means, that makes it all worth it, Jim, that you had that experience with it. We made the decision. I made the decision to pivot with the coronavirus and just put our company completely oriented on the development of this Lead Through Chaos product and to get it out there as quickly as we could. Similar to how we supported a handful of Green Berets who went into Afghanistan and needed a lot of brokered knowledge on hard topics, and so we just kind of took that mindset. And the thing I would say that I think sums up what you were alluding to is we're being told to shelter in place. And what I believe as a Green Beret, this is where this is coming from, is that sheltering in place as a course of action, as a standalone course of action, typically does not end well. I don't mind sheltering in order to get to some high ground and gain an advantage, but I'm not going to just sit idle until someone tells me it's okay not to. I think that's a mindset that is that puts us at a disadvantage. We can follow the rules and do the physical sheltering,
sure,
but the mental sheltering, we have to move to the high ground and get an advantage for when the all clear is given.
And to think about having that advantage every day, how can we win each moment to get to that spot where we come out on the other side, hopefully better than we are today?
Well, I think a lot of it is that how we cannot. I don't believe we can lead our families or our business or our community until we can lead ourselves. That's one of the most important things that I was taught at a young age by my father, that you have to first lead yourself. And when chaos strikes, leading ourselves is one of the hardest things that we can do, because like you said, you felt stuck. And so let me ask you, what were some of the things you were feeling in those initial moments of the COVID? What was it that you felt like physiologically? Describe it to me.
Yeah, definitely anxiety, definitely a fear that didn't seem rational, because it at first didn't seem real to me, like that it could ever come to my town or do what it's doing in the world. So yeah, just that paralysis, fear, anxiety stuff, like real deep and guttural.
Yeah, and so leading ourselves, one of the first things that I think we have to do is to recognize that as humans, we are meaning-seeking, emotional, social story animals, right? And so there's a lot packed into that statement, but emotional means that we operate a lot of times off of fear. And fear is, it's a very, very healthy emotional response to a threat. But that primal response is 250,000 years old. So, what it's great for a snake in the bushes, but when you're trying to orient off of a persistent virus that's probably going to be, at our doorstep for the next 3 months, well, then that kind of primal response is not helpful. It actually paralyzes us and it prevents us from playing a bigger game. So when I talk about leading ourselves, it's about how do we bring our emotional temperature down and get ourselves into a different state from fight, flight, or freeze into calm and connect. That's what Green Berets have to do in combat. It's what first responders have to do when they're, dealing with mass casualties. And it's what we have to do as parents, small business owners, educators right now in this virus. We have to bring our emotional temperature down, and we have to lead ourselves first so that we can deal with the real threat that we're facing, not what our brain is telling us the threat is.
Exactly. It allows us to take informed, calm action rather than what I was finding myself do was reacting unconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you had a chance to hear our second webinar. It was called Leading Through Fear and Resistance, but I had on a brain surgeon whose name is Dr. Mark McLaughlin, and he wrote the book. he wrote the book Cognitive Dominance.
Okay.
And one of the things that Mark talks about in his book is that, and he has real challenges with fear. Can you imagine that? As a brain surgeon, he's seen over 175,000 patients, but he deals with debilitating fear every time he gets that little saw and starts to cut into someone's cranium. And so he's developed these mechanisms to deal with fear. And one of the things that he says that we typically do is when we get these indicators of fear, it's like a smoke alarm going off in the house. And what we do immediately is that we start looking around for the alarm and reacting to the alarm instead of looking for the source of the fire. And that's really what we need to do in these situations, is to have the training and the discipline that when the smoke alarm goes off, we don't panic and run around looking at how to turn the alarm off. We want to figure out where the source of the fire is coming from. And that takes a bit of self-leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. I will go back and watch that. That's right up my alley. Now, when you were a Green Beret, I know that you were in some crazy intense situations. You talked about a couple of them in the course. Would you mind sharing how that, like, what does that look like? Can you give us an example of having to lead yourself when there's actual bullets flying?
Well, I made the decision to become a Green Beret when I was 14 years old, Jim. And I lived in this little logging town of Arkansas, Mount Ida. We didn't even have a stoplight. And a Green Beret came home on leave, and he walked into our soda shop, and every head in there turned, and I knew right then and there that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't even know what he was.
Wow.
But he sat down with me, and he explained to me how Green Berets are very, very different than Navy SEALs, Rangers, and Marines. Those guys go in on a target, they take the target down very quickly, and they usually come off the target within minutes, right? And they usually do the mission themselves. And this guy, Mark, explained to me that Green Berets are different. They parachute in below the noise. They offset away from the target, and then they walk into the chaos with just 12 guys. And they get surrounded by the enemy on purpose. They immerse themselves in the language, the culture, the environment, and they connect with tribal chiefs, village elders, and they stay for a very long time until the relationship is strong enough, and then they help the little guy stand up against the big guy. So this notion of working by, with, and through indigenous people who, frankly, it's a very low trust environment. They would, in the beginning, probably just as soon slit your throat as look at you.
Yeah.
But then over time, you build relationships with these folks. You live right alongside them, and you mobilize them to fight back. If you've seen the movie 12 Strong, that's a movie about the initial days of a Green Beret team in Afghanistan. But we've really been doing this since World War II. And it's all about relationship-based connectors who just happen to be lethal. So we can ride into a village with 12 and ride out with 12,000. And that's an amazing combat multiplier in these dangerous times. But what you're dealing with in those moments, Jim, is that imagine you're working with these tribes in a village, say in Afghanistan, and that village is infiltrated with Taliban. And the villagers themselves are, somewhat duplicitous. They're not necessarily for you or against you. So every night you're sleeping with one eye open. You're always looking over your shoulder to see if someone's going to try to take you out from behind, while at the same time you're trying to create this movement of villagers who go up to their rooftops and fight back at one time against an outside threat. And so trying to lead something like that while simultaneously facing that threat is very much what your listeners are dealing with right now. They have a persistent threat that is knocking at their door. They're worried about themselves, their family members, their parents, while simultaneously trying to keep their business in check or to teach their class from home. And that's hard. I mean, this is a new thing in America. In a very long time, we have not faced a direct threat to ourselves while also facing a threat to our livelihood.
It's so well put. And it's true. There's seemingly no roadmap for this. And it was one of the reasons why I was excited to call you and see if you would come on, because you're one of the few people I would know who've been in a situation where you had things that you knew to do when you were going into those extreme circumstances. And when I was watching your course, I saw that you had some really specific ideas of how to manage yourself, kind of from the foundation, from the beginning. And there's this acronym that you use. It's the HALT, HALT dash
Yeah,
I, HALT I acronym.
yeah,
Can you tell us
and
about that?
yeah, and the irony in that one, and I don't mind talking about it now. I used to be very very anonymous about it, but I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm almost 20 years sober, and that acronym actually came from my program that I was working, and I always loved it because it was at the core of what I found is if I started to get squirrely in my life, if I started to go off the rails, my sponsor always told me, use this acronym, HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And if you are one or more of those things, you need to stop what you're doing and deal with that immediately,
Yeah.
because that makes you vulnerable to take another drink or to make a bad choice. And I have come to believe that I used it in combat. I used it when I was, running late night operations, and when I was under a lot of stress, or just really running hard. And I would use that acronym to just check in with myself, because as leaders, no one teaches us how to check in with ourselves. No one teaches us how to practice self-care. And, I added the I, so hungry, angry, lonely, tired, -ill, in case we're just demonstrating symptoms of corona or something else. We need to tend to that right away. We need to take a knee. And if we're hungry, we need to eat. If we're lonely, we need to check in with someone and ask them how they're doing, and we'll start to feel better. If we're angry, we need to go work out, or do some deep belly breaths. Typically, working out's a great way if we're angry. And if we're tired, guess what? We need to sleep. And if we're ill, then we need to get tested, or at least remain isolated from our loved ones. So those are immediate steps we can do to check in with ourselves and lead ourselves and just stay healthy, because this thing's a marathon, not a sprint.
And these were things that you directly used. I remember you told a story. Maybe you could tell us the story about coming home from a particular deployment where you were completely depleted health-wise, and there was a doctor that kind of got your attention.
Yeah, so I deployed to Afghanistan for the first time in 04, 05, and I was in charge of running all the special operations for the South and the West. And so that was like 30, 35 maneuver elements that were always in combat, always in contact. And, I was the one to monitor their missions, make sure that if they got in trouble, we could get them close air support, or we could extract them, or we could get them a medical evacuation. And these were my friends. These were guys that I've known literally since 1996. And so, it's very, very personal when they get hurt or they're on a high stakes mission. And this was nonstop. This was 24/7 running operations. And I just gutted through it. I just would grind through it. I wouldn't sleep. I would just stay in the fray. And when I got back on the airplane to deploy home after nearly a year in southern Afghanistan, I tell you, I was a shell of a person. I was not the same person that showed up in that country all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And when I got back, I learned that I was going to be sent up to the group headquarters to now do the exact same job for all special operations in the country. And I had about 3 months before I went back. And so I went in for my mandatory physicals and all the stuff they do before pre-deployment and stuff. And the doctor, our surgeon, came in with a very, very grave look on his face. And he said, "Scott, you're going to die in Afghanistan on this next rotation, and it will not be the Taliban that kills you." And he was very angry. He was like, you cannot, your labs just came in, and you cannot do this again. You've got to find a way to take better care of yourself. And I threw a fit. I was like, "You have no idea what I have to do." And he's like, "I was there with you. I saw what you have to do. But I'm telling you, there are people who do what you do, who have found a way to maintain their resilience. And you need to find them. You need to seek them out, or you're not going to come home to your children and your wife." And that really I was angry. But as I walked away, I knew he was right, because I could feel it. And so I committed myself right then and there to finding a way to create my own resilience program while in chaos. And what I thought about, and what I talked to a lot of people, Jim, and what they told me was that they used a form of a battle rhythm. And that's what normally a battle rhythm is what we use in combat to operate as a unit. So the unit has this rhythm that it stays on every day, even if there's a fight going on. You've still got the logistics brief happening. And so, that's that battle rhythm guides the unit through the deployment. But what I learned was I needed a personal battle rhythm that kept me healthy in spite of the chaos. And that's what I adopted.
It seems like that's exactly what we all need right now, is to figure out what is that rhythm of this new kind of day, right?
Yeah.
There's nowhere to take the kids. There's no restaurants to go to. There's no one to go pick up.
That's right. And so let's just unpack that a little bit.
Please.
My dad is really the first guy I talked to and when I was looking for this new rhythm. And my dad, he fought wildfires for 43 years.
Wow.
out west in California. In fact, he spoke on the Youngstown stage. He did a TEDx called The Restoration of the American Chestnut. And he explained to me, he said, Scott, even in chaos, there is rhythm. You just have to find it. And that always stuck with me. And he was right. Even in the most chaotic situations and firefights and medical evacuations and suicide bombers, there's always a rhythm. And, that's just how nature is. And so as leaders, we have to find that rhythm, even with our children home, being, schooled at home or remotely, and even with our job falling apart, there is rhythm. And so it's incumbent on us as leaders to establish a rhythm in our life and in the life of our loved ones. And that rhythm is what will guide us through the chaos. So chaos is all around us. There's nothing we can do about that. We cannot change it. But what we can do, as Sean Coyne said on my webinar, is we can constrain our personal world to some degree and create order. As Jocko Willink says in his book, Extreme Ownership, discipline equals freedom. And so establishing a rhythm, Jim, that addresses mind, body, spirit, and I believe craft, the sharpening of one's saw, is a great way to establish that rhythm. I call it R4.
Mind, body, spirit, and craft.
Yeah. And I call it R4. And the 4 R's are regimen. So regimen would be that rhythm that you have every day. So just imagine it's sacred. It's non-negotiable. It's the thing you do every single day. It's the thing your kids do every single day. It is non-negotiable. It must happen. It's sacred. And then the second R is ritual. So rituals would be the things that actually populate your rhythm or your regimen. They would be, and they should address mind, body, spirit, and craft. So for example, every morning I get up. The first thing I do is I lay in the bed. I do 5 lower body breaths that addresses my body. I get up. I do 25 push-ups that addresses my body. I go to the bathroom sink. I get on both knees and I do my meditations and my prayers that addresses spiritual. And then I move out to the gym and I do my morning workout that addresses physical, mental, and spiritual. And then I journal and I do gratitude. That does mental and that does spiritual. And that's my morning. And I have it stacked that way. And it works really well. And I do that every day. It doesn't matter if the corona's happening or not. It doesn't matter if I'm on the road at a Motel 6. That's my rhythm. And I'm going to do that every morning. And so I populate my rhythm, my daily rhythm, with these rituals. And I make my wife aware of them. I make my boys aware of them. And that's what I do. And I'm telling you, it is the ultimate vehicle to navigate chaos.
As a drummer, the idea of populating my day with rhythm is such a beautiful concept. I love this.
Yeah, and you such a great talk that you did, and I could totally see congruence in what we're saying here. Yes.
Yeah. We're transcribing this interview, so whenever we release this, if you go to donovanhealth.com podcast, you'll be able to see all these different terms that we're talking about. So don't worry about remembering them. They'll all be there for you so that you can access them, as will all the links to all of Scott's courses and his social media accounts.
And all that's free, Jim. And just another good piece of news that we're excited about is the course that you took.
Yeah.
Is we are almost done turning that into an ebook, and I'm hoping to have that out in another 5 to 7 days.
You are a machine. Holy cow. I mean, you recorded this whole course in 2 days. Is that right?
We recorded it in one day.
In one day.
We started in one day. We started in the morning out by the river, and my team came over and we filmed. And then, to my team's credit, I just love these guys.
Yeah.
They edited all weekend long, and just contributed their time.
Yeah.
And had it ready within 48 hours to go hot. And to this, as we're speaking right now, I think it's been sign-ups over 600 people.
That's so great.
We're proud of it.
I love that. Just you make a decision, we organize the team and execute. And if anyone goes and checks out this course, you'll see Scott is there. He's standing in front of a whiteboard, and you can tell he knows this stuff like it's in his heart. And he just tells you the information, and it's one of the most valuable things I've seen in decades.
Wow.
So I can't wait for everyone to check this out.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jim. And I would offer up one other two words that I learned in my time in Special Forces when everything falls apart.
Yeah.
Because I know that people listening to this right now, they're going through a lot of pain, in various ways, and everybody has their own levels of struggle. But I don't think anyone has been untouched by this. And so what I learned in Special Forces that might serve here is that when we really get our butt kicked and when things really fall apart around us, and we go to schools in the Army, like Ranger School and Special Forces School and Survival School, we actually inject struggle to see how people will do. And one of the things that you're taught very early on is that when things fall apart, what you should do is pursue relevance and relatability, right? So if everything falls apart around me, I ask myself, okay, I've lost everything. How can I be relevant right now to someone else? How can I be relevant to their pain and to their dreams? And so when this news of COVID came out, I lost all of my speaking clients, all of them. That they were all, I'm a public speaker, so they were gone. And so I kind of hit my knees and I said, okay, how can I be relevant right now? And that's what, it came to me that, well, when I was in the latter years of Special Forces, I got really good at brokering knowledge on tribal dynamics and water issues and things like that on video and pushing that knowledge down to the teams in the fight who were living in the villages. What if I just did that right now on crisis management for the new group of operators who were in the fight? And so just looking for relevance and then being relatable. Not worrying about your scars or your struggle, and just put it out there. Let your pain be of service to other people, because that's actually how humans have socially evolved in times of crisis. And those two things, am I relevant and am I relatable? I believe if we ask ourselves those questions about the people we serve, the universe will reward that as we move through this thing.
That's so beautifully put. I remember you talking about this in the course, talking about how, like, when you wake up in the morning, you think to yourself, who am I? Especially when things are tough, like, who am I? Who do I serve? What else was on that list? I'm trying to remember.
So who am I? And then you can also ask yourself, why am I here? What's my purpose in this struggle?
Yeah.
I recently did a coaching call with a young executive at a Fortune 500 company, and he's running their command center, and he was just exhausted. Sure. He was so tired and just really watching his own 401k deplete, and his bosses didn't have a clear vision on what they were doing, and his employees were losing morale. And he just asked me, he said, Scott, what's the point? Like, what is the point? Like, all of this is just like, nothing's working. And I said, look, I'll call him James. I said, James, sit down for 5 minutes and I want you to write down, move the pen, don't think, what is your purpose in all of this right now? And within a minute, he said, I got it. I said, what is it? He said, to make sure our organization is still standing and that our people are okay. I said, there you go. And he's like, no, I got it. This is what I've got to do. And so just that clarity of purpose, and then reminding ourselves of what that purpose is on a recurring basis, can be a very, very powerful tool in a crisis. So who am I? What's my purpose? And then who needs me right now? Who needs me right now? And those three things right there, if you just do that at a minimum, you're going to show up better than if you didn't ask those questions.
It's so easy to get caught up in the moment of the chaos and all of the awful news of the chaos, and all those things, like the environment and all the things on the news, are all out of our control.
They really are. I think another exercise we can do that if you haven't done this, and even if you have, it doesn't hurt to go back and do it every couple of days, is, take a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, go somewhere quiet, and write down on the left side what I can control and what I cannot control. I cannot control the countermeasures that the government is putting in place. I can't control that. I cannot control the fact that this virus may be around for 9 months. Now, what can I control? Well, I can control the fact that I have access and placement to a lot of crisis management information from another world that could serve this world.
Yes.
I can control that I have a team that is very good at putting out videography. Jim can control that I have a podcast that I can use as a platform to help people. Like, once you start to get a sense of what you actually can control, then we can start to constrain and bring order to the chaos. And this is what leaders do in chaos. They recognize and they differentiate from what they can control and what they can't. And then they focus their energy on what they can control. And then even within that, you can start to prioritize and you can start to move and start to execute. And then we start to get a better sense of ourselves. And if that execution is focused on relevance and relatability, then you start to get out of your own head and you start to really feel better about yourself. And that elicits reciprocity from the other people you're serving. And guess what? They climb up to the rooftop and they fight alongside you. And all of a sudden now we're moving. We're taking action. And we're moving. I have a friend out in Fayetteville, North Carolina, who owns a winery, and he's done exactly that formula. And all of the other businesses in his little, shopping center had just sheltered in place. But when they followed that philosophy, all of a sudden now, all of them are getting back in the game. And they're not waiting for anyone to tell them it's okay. They're getting back in the game within the context of the shelter in place, but they're starting to get their businesses back. And I think that's what we have to do, is we have to really look at what we can control and what we can't, and then execute against that.
What it sounds like you're talking about is managing energy. So much energy during my day. I could devote it to watching the news for 3 hours.
Yep.
I could devote it to numbing out. I've done all these things, right?
Yep.
And what you're saying is, well, we can manage it. That's the only thing we really have control over is our energy and our immediate circumstance.
Absolutely. And, this whole management of energy, I teach a leadership course at Capital One, and one of my co-instructors up here is Professor James Clausen at Darden University. And he says that leadership is the management of energy, yours and those you serve. And I think that is exactly right. I think that if we think about leadership as how am I going to manage my own energy first? And you're right. There are all kinds of things out there that we can apply our energy to. But if we have clarity of purpose, like, so for example, my focus right now, my purpose is to be the most relevant lead through chaos entity in the arena right now. I want to be the most relevant organization out there on how to lead through chaos. And when the dust clears, that's how I want to be remembered. That's it. That's all I care about. Now, I'm clear on that. So then once I have that level of purpose, now I can say, okay, where do I apply my energy for that? And if I'm not applying my energy, if I'm sitting around binging on, Jack Ryan, then I'm not in alignment with my goals. And so that's a misapplication of my energy. It's a distraction. And by the way, if I'm applying my energy on the 24-hour news cycle, which, by the way, can I just say that's a bad idea?
Please do.
It's a bad idea. The 24-hour news cycle, we will look back on the 24-hour news cycle one day, and we will see the devastating impact this thing has had for sure on this crisis and a range of other things. It is a news cycle, and I've seen it in combat. Yeah. It actually is driving news for ratings. And I know there's some well-intended folks there. I've done my time on Fox News and CNN, but if you're sitting around watching, long segments of the 24-hour news cycle in this thing, it's a distraction, and you're harming yourself and your goals, I believe.
Well, it doesn't matter even which station it is. they're built to turn on our sympathetic nervous systems so that we
Yes.
keep watching because there's the fear energy that if we're going to miss something and something's going to happen to us if we don't know what this thing is that they're about to talk about.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, if not, can we agree that the 24-hour news stations at a minimum and the streaming news stations value market share? I think we can agree to that. They value market share. I understand, like I do a lot of work with the financial sector.
Yeah.
And, there are people who need to watch the news a lot. And there are people in the medical field. But all I'm saying is this. We really do need to filter how we take in our information externally. And if you're getting lots of feeds from the 24-hour news cycle, I don't think it's super healthy. I think that you need a way to dissipate that energy or metabolize that energy. Watch it in certain bursts, maybe in the morning, maybe in the evening, and really be clear. What am I watching this for? Because as humans, we have this semi-conscious primal need to feel like we know what's going on. It's a form of control. And in chaos, we crave it even more. But we really need to ask ourselves, how much of this am I getting that I'm really going to repurpose and use? And if the answer is not much, then we should proportionally limit how much we watch.
How much do you watch a day? Tell us.
None.
None.
Zero. I don't. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
I believe you.
You know what? I've got news alerts on my phone, filters from various sources, because like you said, most of the news organizations have an agenda. They lean one way or the other. So I've got a couple of sources that I get updates on that come across my phone. I'll give it a look, and then I'm back to what I'm doing. But I do not watch it at all. Now, I realize that's extreme, but I will tell you, I've been going on Fox News, CNN, CNBC for years as an analyst on ISIS and all that. So I have a pretty good idea of how they operate.
Yeah.
And I know what I can control and what I can't control right now and what my role to play is. And guess what? There's nothing that they're putting out that I need in near real time that drives what I do. If there's a change in the policy, I'll get it. I'll hear it on social media or someone will notify me. And I've got a guy on my team who filters it for me and who looks at it and who updates me. In fact, we're going to do an update after we're done here, but I don't watch it at all.
And that's, again, it's managing energy. The difference between what you're talking about, where we could spend energy on these things, or we could invest it into, what's my purpose here? Who needs me right now?
I don't have the bandwidth I can't allow the 24-hour news cycle to deplete me when I'm doing calls like this with you. I've got a webinar tonight with 3 Green Berets and a military spouse to talk about adapting to crisis. I can't afford. And I think most of us are in that boat. Like, even if we're homeschooling and we're a single parent, how much energy can you afford to give the 24-hour news cycle when we've got this new reality where we need to apply our energy here? And so again, it goes back to what can I control, what can I not, and where am I applying my energy to make that happen?
Yeah, that's so good. It's so good. Now, I wonder if we could just pivot for a second with your teams through the years. You're overseas, you're in some really intense circumstances. Was there any time where you guys used music at all in what you did or how you took care of yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of levels here. I mean, first of all, if you've seen the movies and special operations and things like that, you know that special operations guys, whether they're SEALs or Green Berets or Rangers, they're pretty comical people. We don't take ourselves that seriously, and they're very unassuming men and women, and they love life and they love music. It's amazing to me in retirement how many of our Green Berets are musicians. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, but we would always, before a mission, we would always rock out to a song as we were getting ready to roll. Because we knew that because it dissipated the energy, you got that emotional temperature down, it got you in flow, it got you super focused. And so part of our pregame warm up, just about every team I was ever on and every team I've ever known has some music as part of their pregame. and then also when coming back, usually there was, but that was more individually done, Jim.
Yeah.
In their own way, people would listen. Some would listen to country, some would listen to heavy metal, some would listen to Mozart. And I will say the special ops community is getting more and more into mindfulness and elements of music that are just there to calm. I know in the alternative therapies realm for post-traumatic stress,
yes,
music is really making its way there. And then finally, in my play, Last Out, that I wrote about the war, which we performed in Youngstown not too long ago. Yeah, I wrote a play about the war called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. It's an all-veteran cast and one military family member. It's all based on true stories. And I act in it as well. It took me 2 years to write it and another year to learn how to act. And that's a midlife crisis for you. But I use music. We use music a lot. We use music because we all have post-traumatic stress. So we get triggered on stage. And so we use music before, during, and after the show to really help us move through that. So in every aspect of my life, both mission execution and transition, post-traumatic stress recovery, music has been a vital part of our life.
The last thing I expected to hear today is that you're a playwright. That was the last thing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, so I tell you what, if you can, there's a TED talk that I did not too long ago. It was in November, called The Generosity of Scars.
Okay. And
it's about my transition from the military, a very, very dark moment I had in my life where I nearly took my own life, and how I pivoted from that into writing a play about the war and performing it around the country. And I actually have the cast members from the play with me in the red circle, and we do scenes from the play. So it's pretty exciting. It's 18 minutes, but you definitely got to watch it.
I'm definitely going to check that out. And in fact, we will include that in our links so everyone out there can see this as well.
Yeah.
Let's just go there for a second. When you were writing this, when you're performing it, how did that help you get out of this dark place?
Well, what I learned with my almost taking my own life was that I shared that story with a buddy of mine a few months later who was also in that place. And I noticed that it brought him out of his darkness, and we reconnected around that story. And it really drove home to me the notion that we can repurpose our struggle in the service of others. And so I started calling that the generosity of scars. And I believe that's really the essence of storytelling in an ancient way, is that, one of us would go through a terrible battle, or we would go through a struggle in farming or a natural disaster. And then around the campfire that night, we would share a story of what we went through. And then everyone around the fire would lean in and literally locate themselves in our story. They would feel what we felt in that moment of combat or in that moment of loss. And there's this empathy and reciprocity. And we still feel it today with your TED talk, and look at the number of views you've got. I mean, people feel themselves in that story. And so with the play, I felt like, after retirement, if no one still understood what it meant to be in war, and 20 years into this thing, my son was 3 when the towers fell, and this year he's going to go fight the war that I didn't finish. And I just thought, man, America really doesn't understand modern war and what it is, and the fact that we're just outsourcing it to a small group of people. So I wanted to tell a story from the stage that would maybe help do that, so that people could feel it. And so I got some help on how to write a play, and I just set about the task. It took me 2 years, and we read it at a community theater thing, Jim, and everybody was bawling, crying after it was done. And they were like, look, that needs to be a play. So we decided I wanted to perform it. So I went to New York and started taking acting lessons, and then we built the cast, and we traveled in a U-Haul around the country, 23,000 miles in this thing. But at the end of that year, this past January 2020, we had been featured on Tom Brokaw. We had been featured on CBS News, and Fox Nation is going to show the play in its entirety, along with a documentary, on May 22nd.
My God, congratulations. That is incredible.
Thank you.
I had no idea, and I can't wait to see this. This is such cool news, because it's this intersection between two seemingly disconnected worlds. I would never imagine the military and the arts connect, but what you're saying is that they deeply connect in a healing sense.
They do. And I believe that, in fact, we did it as a nonprofit. So Monty, my wife, and I, we formed a nonprofit called The Hero's Journey years ago. And it's all designed to help warriors and military families find their voice and tell their story as they come home from service. And so we use the play to help civilians understand the cost of war, to validate the journey of those who have fought it, to connect communities around the hard topic of war, and to heal those who are still holding on and help them let go. And so live theater, art, story, and music does all that. And we're discovering that as we transition home and as we move through chaos and crisis, the ability to tell stories and heal and connect is probably one of the greatest skills that leaders can have. And it's central to my body of work as I teach leadership, both on the for-profit and nonprofit side, is the storyteller is the one that's going to own every room.
We need it. It's in our DNA for our eons and eons.
Yeah. I recently learned about a phenomenon at a Big Idea. I'm working on a rooftop book right now, and I went to a Big Idea workshop in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was a guy named Sean Coyne that teaches it. And Sean was talking about a cataclysmic volcano that happened 70,000 years ago, Jim, and it was in Indonesia. And it took the population of the world. It was so cataclysmic that it took the world population down to 10,000 people. And it almost wiped out the human race. And what they've traced back to that time period is that was where the story animal first appeared, Homo narrans, the storytelling Homo sapien. And it was all about lessons from that and how to survive. And it was so relevant, it coded into our DNA, and that to this day, that's why we love story so much and why we use it so much, even in modern times, is that storytelling in a crisis is the best suited tool we have, And so the more we can use narrative in these situations, the more we can connect with people. And I've seen it in combat. Like I've seen it in really bad situations. You can tell a story that's relevant and purposeful, and you can move people to take action they would never take.
It's a combination of education and healing at the same time.
It really is. And we're wired for it because story does these things. It helps us make sense of the world. It's a sense making tool. It provides purpose and meaning because we're meaning seeking creatures. We remember it. You probably, most of your listeners right now, if I said, what state did I grow up in when I met my first Green Beret? Most people would know the answer to that because story plants memory. And finally, it has an emotional connection. It elicits emotion in the listener. And so the listener feels like they are living the event that you're telling them without going through the actual pain. And that is this amazing mechanism that it's given us to socially evolve very quickly. Well, let's bring it back to the crisis, Jim, and we can let you get, if you want to get back on track with where you want to go. But if you bring it back to the Leading Through Chaos video series, if people watch that, and if you hearken back to you watching it, every single module started with what?
A story.
Yeah. Every one. Not every single one. And that's not by accident. That is by design. That is how I teach and how I train, because it plants a metaphorical context that we can keep going back to, and it accelerates learning fast. Yeah. And so, even in something like that, story has a place.
Couldn't agree more. That's one of the things I loved about watching the course. So can you tell us what is your website? So just so people can get that into their heads.
Yeah, it's rooftopleadership.com is the website. And we've got a ton of free products that we're putting out there, from webinars to video series to ebooks coming soon. We're actually building a landing page called Leading Through Chaos that we'll have up soon.
Great.
But yeah, rooftopleadership.com. And if you want to know about the play, you just go to lastoutplay.com and you can go there and see all the tour stops. And of course, we're on hold right now, but we'll be back at it soon.
That's great. And we're going to put those things in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
So that'll be on donovanhealth.com/podcasts.
Awesome.
So with the course, anyone can sign up for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no limitations on that. If you find yourself in this crisis and you're leading your family, your business, your community, or any of those, you definitely want to check it out. It's for anybody. The webinars, same way.
Yeah.
We have really, really relevant conversations. We have one tonight as we're talking about this, is tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. But, you can get the recordings of it on my website. And then the ebook's coming out. And then I'm really excited about this newest video that we've got. It's about 48 minutes long, Jim. It's one single video, and it's called Danger Close: Leading Yourself When Things Fall Apart. And it gets into the tactical skills of how to get yourself through these rough times. It's great for kids, educators, anybody that has to do what you did, which was deparalyze themselves in those moments. So it'll be coming out tonight, or actually Wednesday, April 1st, we'll be releasing it.
That's great. That's on my list for tomorrow morning. I'm going to start to dig into that.
Yeah,
now,
great.
For our listeners, if you could just like summarize, like what are the top things that my listeners could do right away to help improve at leading themselves?
Yeah. So the first thing is take 3 lower body breaths. Close your eyes, breathe through your mouth, expand your belly on the inhale, and then squeeze your belly button to your spine on the exhale. So it's a big belly breath on the inhale, squeeze on the exhale. Keep your eyes closed and do 3 to 5 reps of that. That's the first thing I want you to do. And that you can do that anytime, it doesn't matter. And what it does is it will immediately lower your emotional temperature, and it will get you into a parasympathetic state that will get you out of your head, out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And it will get you ready to to deal with the next thing. So that's the first thing is to do that. The next thing that I think that I would say to lead yourself is to ask yourself, am I okay? Check in with yourself. Am I all right? Use the hungry, angry, lonely, tired acronym, HALT I. And then if you're okay, tell yourself that I'm all right. I'm okay. And then check in with the people most relevant in your arena. Check in with your spouse, your kids, your coworkers. Ask them how they're doing. That's one. Those 3 things right there, I believe, are absolutely critical. And then the last couple of things I would say, Jim, is I want to reattune to my arena all the time.
Yeah.
I want to constantly reattune. In normal times pre-corona, we could reattune to our arena in the morning, maybe at lunch, maybe in the evenings. Now it's probably every hour on the hour. I want to ask myself, what's changed? What's urgent? Who needs me right now?
Yeah.
And if we can just do those things, we're going to show up better for our people. And try to get some sleep where you can, because this thing really is a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to need you 90 days from now. Here's the way to think about it. When the all clear is given, and there will be an all clear, there's going to be people who stagger out of the bunkers, holding their hand up to cover from the sun, blinking in the sunlight, trying to just figure out which way's up. And there's going to be a smaller group of people who sprint out of the trenches and just go because they were ready and they stayed healthy. Which one are you going to be? And how well you do those things I just talked about will have a lot to do with which one of those groups you're in.
And that's the whole reason I asked you to come on, is to help us see that is possible. Yeah,
Absolutely.
This is so valuable, man. I really appreciate you. And one more thing before you go, could you tell us about your company, Rooftop Leadership?
Yeah, thank you. So when I was working in Afghanistan, Jim, in 2010, we realized we were losing the war. There were more Taliban in the rural areas than when we started in 2001. And a lot of that was because we had gotten away from our Green Beret principles of helping locals stand up on their own. We were trying to just walk the enemy down. And we used coercion. We weren't using the soft skills of human connection. And so we got back to our roots, and a handful of us were selected to design and implement a plan that would help these Afghans stand up on their own. And I was one of them. And we basically moved out into these villages, and we started working with locals, and we would go up on the rooftops whenever the Taliban would attack, and we would defend the village even when they were scared and stayed below. They were stuck in inescapable shock. They were so traumatized for 40 years of war. But over a couple of weeks, every time in every village, one Afghan farmer would go up on his roof, and he would see muzzle flashes from his weapon shooting in the same direction we were. Then a couple nights later, another rooftop, then another rooftop. And within 2 to 3 weeks of that first farmer, every rooftop in the village was pouring rifle fire into the source of the attack and breaking it off. And as I put this program in place, I started calling it rooftop leadership. And it's the ability to move people to take action through human connection, where they do the big work, not because they have to, but because they choose to. And when I came home to the States 7 years ago, I saw a trust depleted America, much like Afghanistan, where this top down coercive leadership is where, everybody's just, every tool in their kit bag's a hammer. So every problem looks like a nail. So I said, what if we brought this rooftop leadership approach of human connection to help leaders move people to the rooftop because they choose to go? And so that's what I've been teaching, and that's what we do.
Not a moment too soon.
Well, I think that's right. And I tell you, I teach this to Fortune 500 CEOs, nonprofit leaders, law enforcement. I still am the primary connection coach at our JFK Special Warfare Center in school. So all of my stuff is very relevant. But I teach it to leaders at all levels, small businesses. And when you can make a human connection in this trust depleted environment, you're the one that's going to own the room. That's who they're going to buy from, invest in, believe in. And whether it's a crisis or not, going forward, it's the human connectors that are going to be the most relevant. So that's what we teach.
That is beautiful. And I am just so grateful that there are people out there like you who you already done so much to serve the country, and you've gone through tons of sacrifice, and you're continuing to do it in this way that is spreading really good stuff to a large number of people. And I'm just grateful that you're here and that we could have this conversation today.
No, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. And to everybody listening, just remember, this thing will end. Every crisis ends, and we will have that moment in the sun. But let's decide right now how we're going to show up for it. Fear is contagious, but so is leadership.
Scott, thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Well, that's it for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Remember to come see us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search Jim Donovan Sound Health. Now, before you go, I'd like to let you know about a free resource I made for you. It's called the Sound Health Newsletter. In it, I share the latest research in music and health in an easy-to-understand form. I also share beginner-friendly music and wellness exercises that you can use every day to feel your best. When you sign up, you also get discounts and first access to all of my sound health products and events. Remember, it's completely free. If you'd like it, just visit donovanhealth.com and enter your name and email address, and I'll start sending you new issues right away. While you're on the website, you can also read full transcripts of this show and check out a ton of other valuable resources. If you have any feedback, send me an email to feedback@donovanhealth.com. All the information presented on this show is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Lastly, come and visit me on our Sound Health Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channels. I'd love to see you there. The Sound Health Podcast is produced by OmniVista Health Learning and Donovan Health Solutions. For Sound Health, this is Jim Donovan. See you next time.